If you've ever felt like the only one holding your family together, like you're the backbone, the wallet, the emotional support line, the one everybody calls when they need something, but nobody really sees when you're falling apart, then please don't scroll away. Don't click to the next video because I need you to hear my story, start to finish. And I promise you this, by the time I'm done, you'll look at sacrifice, love, money, and even betrayal in a completely different way. And you might just decide to choose yourself in a way you never have before. My name is Amelia Rhodes. I'm 52 years old, and for most of my adult life, I was a successful financial analyst on paper and a ghost in my own home in reality. I was the one who paid the bills, kept the lights on, remembered the birthdays, checked the homework, scheduled the doctor's appointments, packed the lunches, soothed the tears, and somehow still showed up at work every day like nothing was wrong. My husband, Mark, used to joke that I was the family CFO, like it was a cute nickname. But the truth is, I was the only thing standing between that man and total chaos. When we got married, I thought we were partners. I thought we were building a life. But somewhere along the way, he decided that my ambition meant he could relax, that my paychecks meant he didn't have to try, that my emotional labor meant he could stay emotionally absent. We had 2 kids, Ethan and Lily, and I poured everything into them too. I was the mom at the science fair, the mom in the stands, the mom who stayed up till midnight sewing Halloween costumes after a full day of meetings and budgets and market reports. And I told myself, this is what love looks like. You give and give and give, and one day they'll appreciate it. That was the lie I clung to for decades. About 2 years ago, I got this idea in my head that maybe, just maybe, if I could pull off one big, beautiful family memory, I could reset everything. We were all so distant, living in the same house but on different islands. Mark in front of the TV, Ethan in his room gaming, Lily glued to her phone, and me at the kitchen table with my laptop and a pile of bills. So I decided I would save for a dream vacation, something everyone had talked about but never believed we'd actually do. The Maldives. White sand, blue water, overwater bungalows, a place where there would be nowhere to run to, nowhere to hide, just us and time and the sound of the ocean. I started putting money aside, quietly, carefully, cutting back on little things for myself. No more salon visits, no more new clothes unless absolutely necessary, packing lunch instead of buying it, saying no when friends invited me out. I funneled every bonus, every tax refund, every little extra dollar into a separate account named Family Trip. I told myself that when they saw what I had done for them, when they saw the tickets, the resort, the effort, they would finally realize how much I loved them, how hard I'd been trying to hold us together. One night, after months of planning in secret, I sat them all down in the living room, my hands actually shaking as I opened my laptop and cast the images onto the TV. I showed them pictures of the resort, the huts over the water, the coral reefs, the sunsets. "Surprise!" I said, feeling like a little kid. "We're going to the Maldives, all of us, in 3 weeks." Ethan looked up from his phone long enough to say, "Seriously? For real?" And Lily screamed and jumped up and down like she'd just won a car on some game show. Even Mark's eyes lit up for a second. "Wow, Ames," he said, "you really went all out." I smiled so hard it hurt. I let myself believe that this was the turning point, that this was the thing that was going to wake them up. They all started talking about bikinis and snorkeling and Instagram photos and what they'd pack, and I sat there quietly, soaking in their excitement, thinking it's worth it. Every late night, every extra client, every coffee instead of lunch, it's all worth it. I had no idea that within a few weeks, that same trip would become the line that split my life into before and after. 3 days before we were supposed to leave, I remember waking up feeling off. My right arm felt heavy, like I'd slept on it wrong. My tongue thick in my mouth. I tried to swing my legs out of bed, but only one obeyed me. The other just didn't. I reached to grab my phone and it slid right out of my fingers, hit the floor with a crack. I opened my mouth to call for Mark, but the word came out slurred, twisted, wrong. Ma. I sounded drunk, like my mouth had forgotten how to form the simplest sounds. For a crazy second, I thought, this can't be happening. Not now, not with everything planned. But my body didn't care about my timeline. My heart pounded, my vision tunneled, and I remember one clear thought slicing through the fog. Amelia, you're having a stroke. I'm a numbers person. I live in probabilities, risk factors, statistics, and I knew my own. Stress, high blood pressure, long hours, not enough sleep, ignoring the warning signs because I didn't have time to take care of myself. I had time to take care of everyone else, but not me. How ironic. I don't remember all the little details after that, just flashes. Mark's voice shouting my name, the ambulance siren, bright lights, the cold of the hospital bed, doctors and nurses moving around me like I was a broken machine they were trying to reboot. When I finally came back enough to understand words, I realized I couldn't move the right side of my body. My arm just lay there like it belonged to someone else, my leg a dead weight. Even my face felt frozen, half of my smile stranded. Tears ran down the side of my face I could still feel. Inside my head, I was screaming, but my mouth refused to cooperate. It's a special kind of hell to be fully aware and trapped in a body that won't obey you. I heard someone say massive stroke, partial paralysis. We'll have to see how much function comes back. And all I could think was, my family, the trip. What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to us? Even in that moment, I wasn't worried about me. I was worried about them. Mark stayed that first night, or at least his body did. He sat in the chair by my bed, scrolling through his phone while I floated in and out of sleep, occasionally glancing up when a machine beeped. "You scared us, Ames," he said once, like I'd spilled milk. The timing really sucks, and I wanted to laugh and cry and scream all at once. I tried to ask about the trip, about the kids, but the words came out broken. He patted my hand, the one that could still feel, and told me not to worry. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Just focus on getting better." On the second day, the kids came by, Liam with that distracted teenage energy, Lily standing in the doorway like she was afraid to come too close. I saw the discomfort in their eyes when they looked at the droop in my face, the tubes, the machines. I tried to joke, tried to make it lighter, but my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. They stayed maybe 20 minutes, told me about some stupid drama with their friends, asked if I needed anything, and then they were gone, rushing off to get some air. What I didn't know was that some air meant something very different than I imagined. On the third day, Mark came in with a folder and a pen. No flowers, no coffee, no real smile, just paperwork. "Hey, Ames," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The travel agency called." He started talking about cancellation policies and insurance and how everything was in my name and how because I was incapacitated, he needed me to sign a general power of attorney just to handle things while I was in the hospital. "It's just temporary," he said, "just to deal with the trip and the bills. You know how complicated all that stuff is." My brain, foggy as it was, still flickered with a tiny alarm. General power of attorney is not a small thing. I deal with documents like that at work. I advise people about these things. And yet here I was, lying in a hospital bed, half my body numb, my speech slurred, my fears on overdrive, and my husband of 26 years asking me to sign away control? "You trust me, right?" he said. And that hurt, because of course I did. Or I thought I did. I tried to ask questions, but the words were thick and slow. I saw impatience flash across his face, the same look he'd give me when I double-checked his math on our taxes or questioned one of his business ideas. "Ames, please," he said. "We don't have time for this. I'm just trying to keep everything from falling apart." My hand shook as I took the pen, my good hand, my left. I signed, and in that stroke of ink, while my brain was still recovering from the stroke of blood, I handed him the keys to everything I had ever built. The next morning, I woke up to a different nurse, a woman with kind eyes named Maria. She was the kind of person who looks at you, not through you. She adjusted my pillow, checked my IV, and said, "How are you really doing, Miss Rhodes?" And for the first time since this happened, I felt like someone actually wanted to know. I tried to answer as best I could, telling her about the trip, about the documents, the way my husband had rushed me. Her face changed, just a little, a tightening around the mouth, a quick glance at the door. "Do you have a lawyer?" she asked gently. I told her yes, an old colleague named Daniel who had helped us with our will years ago. "Do you want to talk to him?" she asked. "You're allowed to, even from here." That sentence hit me like a wave. You're allowed to, even from here. I had been lying there like a sacrifice on an altar, believing I had no power, no voice, and here was this nurse reminding me that I was still a person with rights, even half paralyzed in a hospital gown. I nodded, as much as my neck would let me, and she said quietly, "Let me see what I can do." While Mark was handling things, Maria was handling something very different. She found Daniel's number in my file, she made the call, and 2 days later, there he was at my bedside, suit slightly wrinkled, eyes sharp, voice low. "Amelia," he said, "first of all, I'm glad you're alive. Second of all, we need to talk about this power of attorney you signed." He laid out the reality. Mark now had the legal ability to access my accounts, transfer assets, make decisions in my name, not just about the trip, but about everything, my bank accounts, my house, my investments. "Did you intend to give him that much power?" he asked, and tears slid down my face because no, I hadn't. I had intended to let my husband handle a temporary crisis, not take over my entire financial life. "And where is he now?" Daniel asked. That was the moment Maria stepped closer and said, "He left for the Maldives yesterday with your kids." My heart stopped. Not literally, the machines would have told you, but in every way that counts. I stared at her, at him, waiting for someone to say it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a bad dream layered on top of another bad dream. They went?" I whispered, each word like lifting 1,000 pounds. "On the trip?" Maria nodded. "I'm so sorry," she said. "They said you insisted they still go, that you didn't want to ruin it for them." I laughed, this ugly, broken sound, because of course that's what they said. It sounded like me, the old me, the one who would set herself on fire to keep everyone else warm. But I hadn't said it this time. I hadn't even been asked. My husband and children had taken the money I spent years saving, the trip I dreamed up as a way to bring us together, and they left me behind in a hospital bed to enjoy it without me. Grief is a strange creature. It doesn't always come as a wave of tears. Sometimes it comes as a cold, clean clarity, like a wind that blows all the dust off your life and lets you see the bones beneath. Lying there, replaying every moment of the last few months, the last few years, I realized something that shattered me and then slowly began to set me free. I had trained them to treat me this way. I had taught them with every, "It's okay, I'll handle it," with every, "Don't worry about me," with every, "You go have fun, I'll stay back," that my needs were optional, that my body was a machine that would just keep going, that my love was unconditional no matter how little they gave in return. They didn't become selfish overnight. They grew that way in the soil of my endless sacrifice. And in that hospital bed, for the first time in 26 years, I said no. Not out loud, not yet, but in my heart, a solid, heavy, unshakable no. "Daniel," I whispered, "I want it back. I want my life, my accounts, my future back. I want to change my will. I want to protect myself." And he nodded like he'd been waiting for me to say those words for a very long time. The next few days were a blur of forms and signatures and quiet strategic action, all from that narrow hospital bed. Daniel moved fast. He filed to revoke the general power of attorney on the grounds that it had been signed under duress and diminished capacity. He contacted my bank, froze the accounts they hadn't already drained for the trip. He made sure no property could be sold out under me. Together, we rewrote my will, line by line, and for every name I crossed out, every percentage I moved away from the people who had left me behind, I felt a little bit of strength return to the side of my body that still worked. I added Maria's name, not because she needed my money, but as a gesture, a symbol of the fact that this woman, who had known me for a week, showed me more genuine care and respect than the people I'd lived with for decades. I added a line about creating a foundation, something I didn't fully understand yet, just a seed of an idea. If I survived this, if I got even part of my life back, I wanted my money to mean something more than vacations for people who couldn't be bothered to stand by me when I couldn't walk. I saw pictures of their trip later, because the internet never sleeps. My daughter posted them on social media, smiling on the beach, cocktails in hand, hashtags like family goals and blessed, under photos that made me physically sick. My son in a hammock, my husband in sunglasses, and not one mention of me, not one post that said, "Mom, we miss you. We wish you were here. We're praying for you." Nothing. It was like I had died and the only thing they missed was access to my credit cards. As painful as it was, those photos were a gift. They showed me plainly who they had chosen to be and who I could choose to stop being, the woman who paid for everyone else's happiness at the cost of her own life. When they finally walked back into the hospital 2 weeks later, tanned and relaxed and smelling faintly of sunscreen and expensive meals, they were not expecting the woman who met them. I was still in a hospital gown, still half paralyzed, but my eyes were different. There was steel there now, a quiet fire. Mark came in first with that same slightly annoyed expression like I had inconvenienced him. "How are you feeling, Ames?" he asked, as if he'd been there the whole time. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I saw not my husband, not my partner, but a man who had chosen himself over me in the clearest way possible. Behind him, Ethan and Lily hovered, shifting their weight, glancing around, uncomfortable in the sterile light of the room that had become my world. "I'm awake," I said slowly, my speech still thick but my meaning sharp. "And I know everything." I watched the color drain from Mark's face. "What do you mean?" he stammered. I nodded toward Daniel, who had stepped into the room like a quiet storm. "She means," Daniel said calmly, "that the power of attorney has been revoked, the accounts have been frozen, and there are going to be some changes when she gets home." Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish yanked out of water. The kids looked from him to me, confusion turning into something like fear. I almost felt sorry for them, but then I remembered the photos, the cocktails, the hashtags, and my sympathy dried up. The day I was discharged from the hospital and brought back to my house, it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene, the scene of a long, slow murder of my self-respect. But it was also the place where I was going to be reborn. Daniel had already made the necessary moves. The property was legally protected, the locks had been changed, and when Mark tried to swagger up the front steps with his suitcase, he found his key no longer worked. He banged on the door, furious. "Amelia, open this door! What is this?" I watched for my wheelchair as the new caregiver, a sturdy woman with kind eyes and no patience for nonsense, opened the door just enough to speak through the crack. "Mr. Rhodes," she said, "you no longer live here. This house belongs to Miss Rhodes, and she has requested that you leave the premises." He looked past her, to me, expecting me to rush in, to smooth things over like I always did, but I just sat there, my good hand resting on the arm of the chair, my heart pounding, but my face calm. "You can talk to my lawyer," I said slowly, each word deliberate. "We're done, Mark. I'm filing for divorce." For a second, I thought he might actually explode. His face went red, his voice rose. He said things I won't repeat here. Ugly things about loyalty and ingratitude, about how I was choosing money over family. And that was the moment I realized how fully our roles had reversed. All these years, he had chosen comfort over my well-being, vacations over my health, his pride over my dignity, and now that I was choosing self-respect over his convenience, he called it betrayal. But I didn't flinch, not this time. The months that followed were the hardest and the most important of my life. Rehab was brutal. There's no pretty way to say that. Learning to walk again with a cane, to lift my arm an inch higher each week, to speak more clearly, to swallow without choking, to brush my teeth with my non-dominant hand. Every tiny action was a mountain. There were days I sobbed in frustration, days I wanted to sink back into the bed and let the numbness win. But every time I felt myself slipping, I thought about that beach in the Maldives, about my empty hospital room, about the pen in my trembling hand when I signed away everything, and then about the moment I took it back, one decision at a time. And I pushed. One more rep, one more step, one more exercise. The therapists pushed me. Maria visited me when she could. Daniel checked in. I built, slowly, a new little circle of people who saw me as a human being, not a machine or a wallet. And with every small victory, every extra step, I felt less like a victim and more like a survivor. Divorce is never pretty, especially not after 26 years. Mark fought dirty, tried to paint me as unstable, ungrateful, tried to guilt-trip the kids into taking his side. Some days it worked. Ethan and Lily would send angry texts. "How can you do this to Dad? You're breaking up our family." And every time I wanted to crumble and apologize, I had to remind myself, this family broke the moment they chose a beach over my hospital bed. I didn't break it, I just refused to keep pretending it was whole. Over time, as the legal dust settled and the money he had secretly siphoned out had to be accounted for, the narrative began to shift. People saw the truth. Even the kids couldn't completely deny what had happened. Lily came to me one afternoon, eyes red, voice shaking. "Mom, I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't understand. I wanted to go. I didn't want to think about you being sick. It was easier to pretend everything was fine." I looked at my daughter, this young woman I had raised to be kind, but who had learned selfishness in our own home, and I realized that holding on to my anger forever would be another way of staying paralyzed, not in my body, but in my heart. "I'm angry," I told her honestly, "and I'm hurt in ways you don't even understand yet, but I'm also your mother, and if you're willing to do the work, to really see what happened here, to take responsibility, then maybe we can build something new." Forgiveness, I learned, is not a one-time event, it's a daily choice, and sometimes that choice includes loving someone from a distance.
As my body grew stronger, my mind started asking a new question. What now? I had spent my entire adult life taking care of a man and 2 children, of clients and colleagues, of bosses and friends, and now, for the first time, I had to answer the question, who is Amelia without all of them leaning on her? The idea that had been a throwaway line in my revised will began to grow into something real. I started reading about stroke recovery, about how many people leave the hospital with no idea what comes next, how many don't have a Maria to advocate for them or a Daniel to fight for their rights, how many go back to homes where they are ignored, minimized, or outright abused because they are no longer useful. I thought about the terror I felt the first time I tried to stand, the shame of needing help to go to the bathroom, the way my own daughter had hesitated in the doorway of my hospital room. I thought about how alone I had felt, even when the room was full of medical staff, and I knew I didn't want anyone else to have to feel that same combination of vulnerability and abandonment. With the settlement from the divorce, my savings, and a portion of my retirement fund, I ran the numbers carefully, of course, old habits die hard. I opened something I called Second Chance Haven, a small support center for stroke survivors and their families. The name felt right, because that's what a stroke is if you survive it, a violent, terrifying, undesired second chance at life. We started small, 1 room in a medical office building, a few folding chairs, a coffee machine that worked half the time. I hired a part-time social worker, partnered with a physical therapy clinic down the hall, invited Maria to come speak as a nurse who had seen it all, and then I sat in that circle with people whose faces drooped like mine had, whose hands shook, whose families were confused and scared, and I told them my story, start to finish, the sacrifice, the trip, the stroke, the betrayal, the lawyer, the locks, the rehab, the divorce, the tears, and the new beginning. I watched their eyes fill up with something I recognized instantly, hope, the fragile, stubborn kind that sprouts in burned fields. We didn't just talk about exercises and medications. We talked about boundaries, about money, about power of attorney documents, about not signing anything you don't fully understand, no matter how much you love the person putting the paper in front of you. We talked about self-worth, about the difference between caring for your family and letting them consume you, about the painful truth that sometimes the people closest to you will step over you if it's easier than kneeling down to help you up. We cried, we laughed, the dark, ridiculous kind of laughter that only people who've been through hell together can share. And slowly, I watched people rebuild, not just their muscles, but their sense of self, their courage, their willingness to say no, to demand respect, to ask for help. Today, as I speak these words to you, I still walk with a slight limp. My right hand is not as strong as it once was. My speech, if you listen closely, still has a hitch to it on certain words, but I have never felt more whole. I no longer live in a house where my worth is measured in dollars and favors. I no longer sleep next to a man who sees me as an inconvenience when I break down. I no longer drive myself to exhaustion to earn the kind of love that should have been freely given. I own my time, my money, my body, my story, and I choose every day to spend them on things and people that give life back to me instead of draining it away.
If you're watching this and something in your chest is aching, if you're thinking, that's me, I'm the one who gives everything and gets crumbs, please hear me. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect your finances, your health, your heart, even from the people who share your last name, especially from them if they've shown you again and again that they will not show up when it counts. Love does not mean turning a blind eye to betrayal. Forgiveness does not mean giving people unlimited access to hurt you. Family is not a free pass to your bank account and your body. Your life is yours, your second chance, whether it comes after a stroke, a divorce, a job loss, a breakdown, is yours to shape, and there is no prize at the end of the road for most self-sacrificing martyr. There is only exhaustion and regret. You do not have to wait for a medical emergency to wake up like I did. You can start smaller, today. You can start by opening your bank app and understanding your own accounts, by reading the documents before you sign them, by making a will that reflects what you truly value, by having the hard conversations you've been avoiding. You can start by noticing who rushes to your side when you're the one in need, not just when you're the one who's useful. You can start by saying out loud if you need to, my life matters too. I thought my stroke was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and in some ways it was. It took parts of me I will never fully get back, but it also stripped away the illusions I had wrapped myself in. It showed me who really loved me and who loved what I did for them. It forced me to rebuild from the ground up, this time with a foundation of self-respect, not just self-sacrifice. So if you are in the middle of your own crisis right now, if everything is collapsing, I won't insult you by saying everything happens for a reason. Sometimes terrible things just happen. What I will say is this: you still have choices. Even from a hospital bed, even with tears in your eyes, even when half your body won't move, you still have a voice. You still have a say in who gets access to your power, your money, your heart, your future. Thank you for listening to me, for staying till the end, for letting my story sit next to yours for a little while. When this video ends, before you rush back into your life, I want you to do one thing. Ask yourself, if I had a stroke tomorrow, who would show up at my bedside and who would get on the plane without me? The answer to that question is not meant to break you, it is meant to free you, to help you see where to pour your love and where to start building walls. You deserve a life where your kindness is not exploited, where your sacrifices are not expected but appreciated, where your second chances are honored, not wasted.
If I, half paralyzed and heartbroken, could find the courage to lock the door on people who took me for granted and open a new one into a life built on self-love and purpose, then you, right now, fully conscious and holding your own pen, can take at least one step toward your own new beginning. This is Amelia Rhodes, stroke survivor, former family martyr, now proud owner of my own life, telling you this from the other side of betrayal. You are stronger than you think. You are worth more than you've been taught to believe, and it is never too late to choose yourself.